Hi everyone, this is Sasha welcoming you back to the Arca's NFT Creator Series. Today we have Gmoney joining us for the next episode. Super excited to have you here. I know you're a busy man, so thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so some people in the NFT space will know you from your Bored Ape. Some people know you for your punk. Some people will know you from your collaboration with Prada and Nike. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe a bit of background of how you got into the space, what you sharpened your teeth on.
For sure. I come from a traditional finance background. I was trading equities basically for the last 15 plus years, following the stock market since I was 12 years old and investing for the first time when I was 14 back in the mid to late 90s. And yeah, I was just always enamored with free markets and stuff. It wasn't until 2017 that I got into crypto. And I originally heard about crypto maybe in 2012, 2013. I'm not exactly sure, but the price of Bitcoin was around $27, and I was trying to figure out how to buy it. I couldn't figure out how to buy it. It shot up to $1,000, and then it pulled back to $200, and I was like, oh, like that was like tulips, and I didn't really look at it again until 2017 when I moved down to Puerto Rico, and I met a trader that was trading Bitcoin, and they were telling me that the price was back above $1,000. So as a student of price action, I always find it interesting when a price, the price of something comes back to where it was before. And so I was like, all right, there's got to be something more here than I originally thought. And I started going down the rabbit hole, and I found Ethereum, and then I got caught up in the mid to late cycle of the ICO boom. And in Q1 of 2018, I was like, blockchain tech is really cool. It's amazing. It's going to change the world. But I thought it was too early. And so since I feel like the internet as we know it today really took about 10 years after the .com bust to kind of really develop. So I was like, all right, well, tech moves fast. So maybe it'll be like 5 to 7 years because it took 10 years last time. And it obviously it took way faster, right? Like it happened within 2 years. And so like I started coming back into the space in earnest in probably like Q1 of 2020, and really just going down the DeFi rabbit hole, like relearning all things crypto. And it wasn't until August of 2020 that I found NFTs. And it made sense to me right away because on the first day of quarantine, I started playing PlayStation. Started playing Fortnite on PlayStation, right? Like I hadn't played a video game in over 10 years. And I'm like, the only way I'm going to survive is by playing video games. And so I download Fortnite. I start playing with my two best friends and one of their nephews, who's 12 years old. And the first thing this kid asked me is, what skins did I buy? I'm like, skins, like, they don't give me any special powers. Like, I'm not spending money on skins. And, fast forward 2 or 3 weeks, I keep reloading my V-Bucks to keep buying skins. And I realized, like, that kid who's 12 years old now, he's going to be 22 in 10 years, and he's going to be totally okay with owning a totally digital asset. So I was like, there's this massive super cycle here that's coming, and like, how do I take advantage of it? And at the time, like, I had no idea, right? Because like, I didn't know what NFTs were at that moment. Unity and Roblox weren't publicly traded companies at that time. So I was just like, this is just something I got to keep an eye out. But then towards the end of DeFi summer in 2020, I found NFTs, and I was like, holy shit, like this is it, right? Like this is your skin on Twitter, this is your skin on Discord, and this is going to be massive. And I really started going down the rabbit hole, and it culminated with me buying my ape punk and writing a thread about it, which went viral on crypto Twitter, which is how kind of like the Gmoney brand started.
Yeah, I find that very interesting, especially what you said about the the 10-year lag between the .com bubble and like the next tech rally. It kind of lines up with the 2 years here. If you run the math on the 24/7 365 market that we have versus normal market open and close, our market's around 4.8 times as fast. So it kind of makes sense.
Fast, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a good one.
So it's a very interesting story to hear how you got into NFTs. I kind of followed the same path. I was a gamer, and the first nibble that I had into NFTs was Axie Infinity. It was a pretty clear cut, like it wasn't about making money or doing this or that. It was very naturally aligned for someone that's played, RuneScape, World of Warcraft, Diablo series. Like you want to own the assets that you create. There was aftermarkets for CS:GO. There's aftermarkets for RuneScape logs. Like the idea of owning assets within a game is not new. It was just very broken up until that point. So something like an Axie, obviously there's the benefit of two or so years ago, there wasn't that many participants, so it wasn't so expensive. But it was just like natural to kind of take the gaming aspect and move it to this space. And I think that gaming has been a very good launch pad for a lot of us to actually get involved with NFTs. I now, now that we're running an NFT fund, it's a big step up from just being interested in playing a video game that I own the assets in. So I think it's been very good for the opportunity set here. And I agree with you that the younger generations are much more predisposed to an all digital environment. You're seeing the transition happen from anything from money to information. Like I get most of my news from Twitter now. Like I can't remember the last time I turned on the news. So everything is starting to move online, and I think assets are kind of one of the last sectors to make that leap. And we're kind of seeing the beginning of it right now. I think that right now the use cases are rather rudimentary, but it's a good proof of concept for what can actually be done.
Yeah, I agree. That I totally agree, which is why I pivoted into the space really early on, because I just saw like the potential. Like this is $1 trillion market, right? Like that's end right there, right? Like that to me is like worth delving into, no matter what asset class you usually look at.
100%. We've talked a lot about how we got involved in NFTs. I think it's interesting to take it on the other side. How do you think that NFTs themselves have changed the landscape for either creators or projects in terms of fundraising, bootstrapping, community building? I feel like a lot of this is being seen from how can people make money, and that's a lot of what's been pushed into the mainstream media. Like this person bought this asset and made $1 million in a week. But on the other side, you're seeing, in my opinion, like grassroots creators being funded and being supported in a way that was not previously possible. So I'm interested to hear your take there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like to your point, like it's like a new version of fundraising, right? Of crowdfunding, right? Like you're seeing a lot of projects come out with NFTs. They raise the money, and then they're going to use that money to build whatever it is on the roadmap for them, right? And like, I think that's really cool and interesting. It's like a new version of Kickstarter, right? Where like as a founder, you're not necessarily giving up equity, but you're building like a really strong community. So I think each founding team that's going out there in need of capital kind of needs to decide, because sometimes there's projects that it does make sense to have VCs aligned and helping you and working on it, and there's other projects that sometimes like, well, we want like a strong community of 10,000 members, right? And it's like that to them is more important. And I think every project's different, but I think the most important thing is, as a founder or founding team, is like you have that optionality of deciding which part it is you want to be of, right? Like how you want to build that community. And that's, I think, the key difference is like having that, and that's across all of crypto, right? Is you want to have that optionality where people say, oh, well, if you're going to store your crypto on a centralized exchange, what's the point of even dealing in crypto? Where it's like you want to have that option, right? Like if you want to self custody, you can self custody. If you want to have centralized custody, you can do that too, and that's okay, right? Like there's no wrong or right way to do it. And I think that's the same way with fundraising. It's like the more options you can give more people, I guarantee you probably 6 to 12 months from now, there's going to be different, like, quote unquote, fundraising mechanics of how to build a community, empower that community, right? That we were like, oh, like that's a great way, an innovative way to do it, right? And I think that's the that crypto unlocks, right? Is like having a lot of people allow them to use their creativity, whether it be financially or creatively or in what's a new fundraising technique, and that's how we get innovation.
100%. I think that one of the biggest things that you've been seeing is the kind of connection between investor base and user base. We talk a lot, Jeff at Arca talks a lot about how the McDonald's shareholders are not the same as the McDonald's customers. And you kind of have a disconnect in that triangle between the project or company, the investor base, and the user base, where there's, a clash of wants and needs. But in this space, you have more of a linear relationship between project and user, because the user is now also financially motivated, has sweat equity and actual equity in the project, and becomes natural evangelists for the actual thing being created, whether it's a single purpose DAO, a collectibles environment, like a community with VIP passes, or you go down the stack and you talk about like identity and .eths and .nfts and domain names. Like these are all very grassroots efforts, and the people that put money in you actually have a want and a need to be a part of that space. And I think that is a lot different than the current environment we see elsewhere. And I think that's.
I agree. I think a really good analogy I like to use, that's a good one as well, is like, imagine if when Uber started offering their $25 ride credits back when they first came out, if instead of that, they offered $25 worth of equity, right? Like that's, like what would that have done to competition in the ride sharing space? It probably would have crushed it, and like, I think that like, that's a good example, right? Where it's like, then your users become like the biggest stakeholders and they become the biggest proponents of it. And I think you kind of, NFTs, crypto in general, is just like really taking that narrative and putting it into overdrive.
Yeah, and we're seeing that right now with LooksRare. Day one airdrop retroactively, and you get a piece of the pie. And I think it's been a big narrative for this space, that people want to actually feel like they own something and that they're a part of something, as opposed to just tertiary involvement. While we're speaking on that, there's you hear all over the place. There's a lot of pushback on NFTs from the gaming side. It's environmental concerns. From mainstream media, it's ethical concerns, as well as money laundering, this and that. And in general, there's just a lot of skeptics as to how a front-facing image can be worth so much money. I have my own reservations and pushback to those claims, but I wanted to hear your take on what you would say to those skeptics.
To skeptics in terms of saying that it's all money laundering, you're saying?
Like NFT efficacy in terms of whether it's environmental concerns or money laundering, or ethical concerns of the rich getting richer, just things along those veins that have been pushed in a narrative basis.
I mean, I think that in general, like, all the FUD you get around NFTs is from people that don't understand them. I generally just tune them out at this point, because like I'm just trying to help people understand like the power of them. And I know that there's enough people trying to educate across a bunch of different ones. So it's like, to me, it's like with regards to I guess money laundering is like, it's the same response that I think everybody in crypto would use, is like, why would you use a public blockchain that can't be changed over the course of time, like to launder any money? Like there's plenty of ways to launder money effectively that have been around for decades, if not maybe centuries. And like, why would you just do that on a public blockchain of all things? So that to me is like my response to that. It's like, if you think there's money laundering in NFTs, then like we should probably tackle the multi-billion-dollar art market first, right? Because there's got to be money laundering there. It's been around for ages. And so to me, like that's my response with that. Like with regards to the environmental concerns, I think a lot of it is just comes from a place of not enough education, where I think that one, when Ethereum goes to proof of stake, proof of stake, then like we don't have this issue anymore. And to me, so that's like a temporary issue that other people might be more concerned about than me, I guess. But like, to me, it's like we have this life-changing technology for so many people, and you're telling me that the whole reason you don't want to do it is because of these reasons. Like I just don't even like necessarily have a response to that. It's like, so many people's lives are about to change, and you're telling me that you think this is worse for the environment than like printing trillions of dollars like every single year and like killing trees, and like how bad is that for the environment? You know, like every industry is bad for the environment, and like it's just like varying degrees of it. So that to me is like I'm not necessarily concerned with those things, because I'm looking more at the positive aspect of things, and like how is this going to change people's lives over time. And I think it's going to be super significant, and I think we're all very, very fortunate to be alive when like this is happening, because this is going to happen only once in history.
Yeah, and I had to look it up while you were saying that. A fun fact I like to disseminate to people that talk about like the energy usage is that in the United States in 2020, Christmas lights in December alone used between 3.5 and 5 billion kilowatt hours. The Bitcoin network as a whole, which people use as a proxy for the rest of the market, consumes 100 to 200 terawatt hours a year, which means that if you annualize the amount of energy that the U.S. uses in terms of Christmas lights, it's around 30 to 45% of the entire grid. And so my pushback is always like, what do you determine has value in terms of energy usage? Especially in the gaming sector, which I found very interesting, that they're pushing back on environmental concerns of the energy output. When I own like a $3,000 computer rig at home, I can guarantee you that's not a low wattage system. That's taking energy, and so there's kind of this situational irony where the people that use a lot of energy are telling others that they shouldn't be using the energy. And at the end of the day, I find that energy is entropy based, and if you create it, it's going to be used. And at that point, you just have to decide what is the best way to use that energy. There's been lots of reports on like Bitcoin and the rest of the networks not using additive demand. They're pulling from a grid that's already has surplus. Obviously, you're seeing some people spawn up on their own, but this is more as a whole. But I think as you move down the stack, like you said, people just need to understand what the value of NFTs are better. And I think these utility-based NFTs are actually a big help for people that are outside of our small sphere of influence to understand what can actually be happening. I think the Coachella NFT drop that's going with FTX right now is very interesting, where it's not going to be like $1 million investment, but you can buy a lifetime pass to Coachella for the rest of, as long as Coachella exists, and as long as you're alive, you have a pass to go to Coachella. You have tickets a year. Some have additive benefits. And I think that's like a real, people understand that you're owning something. It's not the picture in front, because the image for them are just like a key. You're not paying $50,000 for a key. You're paying $50,000 to go to Coachella every year for the rest of your life. And I think those type of real world
Exactly
are very good springboards for people to like wet their beak on what's actually happening here. And like I said, like right now it's all a proof of concept. We're just seeing what we can do, what the contracts allow, what innovation brings. And you have every major company like pounding at the door to get in. So there's going to be some misses, and there's going to be some snafus, but it's a rapidly growing industry, and to expect a perfect growth vector is I think it's a fool's errand. So I embrace the rough roads. I think it's you're watching a sector re-rate in real time.
Yeah, and it's exciting.
Where obviously you're quite bullish, considering you noted a $1 trillion market cap for the space. But what do you see in the NFT space in like the next 5 to 10 years? Whether it's it doesn't have to be price, it could be sentiment or sector growth or new themes emerging. What do you think is the next 5 to 10?
Well, I guess let me correct myself. I don't foresee a 1 trillion. It's a multi-trillion, right? This is like, I mean, every industry on the planet combined coming on chain, it's massive, right? So to me, it's like, when I first thought of NFTs, if I were to tell you, where do I see it 5 to 10 years from now? I don't think anybody can answer that question, but like ultimately what I see is like an awesome, like, downstream scenario is like, what happens if instead of in 2008 the world collapsing, the world collapsing and brought to its knees because some people took over leveraged bets on commercial and residential real estate through like mortgage-backed securities, if that's on chain, right? Because like a mortgage is an NFT, right? Like a house is an NFT. So like what happens if you can take all these NFTs, you can slice them up, you can make regionalized portfolios, you can have them trade on chain in real time, so you can see what their collateralization rates are in real time, right? So it's like that means that instead of having these banks that are massively under collateralized on these trades, you know in real time exactly who's collateralized and who's going to be getting wiped out, and you won't have like a massive bailout that's required, right? Because people will be readjusting risk in real time. So like to me, that's where like I saw the world going. It's like, yeah, like at some in the future, we will have mortgages on chain. We will have like house deeds on chain, right? Because they are NFTs. And that to me is like the bullish upside, right? And that's like just one industry. You know, what about like driver registrations and insurance and all these other things? So like to me, pretty much every industry as it comes goes digital, it will be coming on chain as probably an NFT.
I completely agree. I think I think the only thing stopping that is, regulatory. It's going to be a slow process, in my opinion, just because,
Yeah,
buying a deed to a house doesn't mean much if it's not recognized. um,
exactly.
but once that gets set up, I think that you're right. This is, I kind of uh, half jokingly, half seriously, look at NFTs as like an ETF equivalent, where, in the sense that it's a wrapper and you can put anything inside that wrapper. You can put housing, house deeds, you can put insurance, you can put, KYC information, you can put VIP passes, you can put, a 5-minute phone call, right? You can put just about anything in this wrapper that is a non-fungible token. And I think a lot of people focus on the front end of the token and not enough people focus on the back end. And
Exactly.
so I completely agree with you. I think that's where we're heading.
Um, I,
Do you have anything in terms of anything you want to let the listeners know, or anything that you want to plug at this point? Things that you're working on?
no, I'm working on a couple cool things that I got in the pipeline. Nothing that I can disclose because I'm under NDA. But I think 2022 is going to be a bigger year for NFTs than 2021 was.
Awesome. Do you think that's driven by collectibles markets? Do you think that's driven by gaming, a new sector altogether?
I'd say I think it's everything altogether. I think it's just you're just seeing a lot of people realize that there's a massive opportunity here and they want to take advantage.
Well, I'm definitely on board with the flaming hot ball of money theory. So the right time would hopefully lift all boats. I appreciate the time. Thank you for coming on.
All right, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep. Take care.